In a quiet little neighborhood tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city, life moved at a predictable pace. The streets were lined with perfectly trimmed hedges, colorful flower beds, and houses that looked like they'd been plucked straight out of a magazine. This was Maplewood Estates, a place where everyone knew each other, or at least pretended to, and where maintaining appearances mattered more than anything else. The residents of Maplewood prided themselves on their community's charm and orderliness. Every home followed strict guidelines set by the Homeowners Association, HOA, an organization responsible for keeping things just so. From the shade of paint on front doors to the type of plants allowed in gardens, nothing escaped scrutiny. It was a neighborhood built on conformity, and most people liked it that way. Well, almost everyone. One sunny Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up outside 12 Maple Lane, one of the nicest houses on the block. Out stepped the Thompson family, Mark, Lisa, and their two energetic kids, Jake and Emily. They had just bought the house after saving for years, and this was their chance to start fresh in what they hoped would be their forever home. The kids ran around excitedly, imagining tree houses in the backyard and bike rides down the cul-de-sac. Mark and Lisa exchanged happy glances as they unloaded boxes, dreaming of barbecues and weekend get-togethers with new neighbors. But not everyone shared their excitement. Across the street, Karen Miller watched the commotion unfold from behind her lace curtains. Karen wasn't just any resident. She was the self-appointed watchdog of Maplewood Estates. As the unofficial leader of the HOA, she took immense pride in ensuring every household adhered to the rules. Her own yard was immaculate, her mailbox gleamed, and her rose bushes won awards at local gardening contests. To Karen, the neighborhood was her masterpiece, and she guarded it fiercely. From the moment the Thompsons arrived, Karen noticed things that didn't sit right with her. First, there was the teal-colored door they painted over the weekend, a bold choice that clashed horribly with Karen's idea of tasteful decor. Then came the basketball hoop mounted in the driveway, which she deemed too noisy for such a serene setting. And let's not forget the solar panels Mark installed without seeking prior approval from the HOA board. Each decision felt like a personal affront to Karen's vision of perfection. Karen wasted no time addressing these infractions. Within days, the Thompsons received their first official-looking letter from the HOA, courtesy of Karen. It politely reminded them of the approved color palette for exterior paint and requested they repaint the door immediately. Another note followed shortly, criticizing the basketball hoop and suggesting it be removed to preserve the aesthetic appeal of the street. When the solar panels went up, Karen sent yet another letter, calling them unsightly and warning that unapproved modifications could result in fines. To the Thompsons, these letters seemed excessive. Sure, they understood the importance of following guidelines, but they couldn't help feeling singled out. After all, plenty of other homes had quirks, like Mr. Peterson's neon pink flamingos or Mrs. Dawson's wind chimes, but those never seemed to attract Karen's ire. Still, they tried to stay positive. Maybe Karen would warm up once she got to know them better. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Behind closed doors, Karen made no secret of her disdain for the newcomers. At book club meetings and coffee mornings, she aired her grievances freely. "They're disruptive," she told anyone who would listen. "Always making noise, always doing whatever they want without thinking about the rest of us. Honestly, they don't fit the neighborhood." Her comment struck a chord with some residents, especially those who valued uniformity above all else. Others, however, found her behavior petty and unnecessarily harsh. While Karen gathered supporters among the older, more traditional homeowners, whispers of dissent began to ripple through the community. Younger families in particular sympathized with the Thompsons, seeing them as relatable and refreshingly down to earth. Despite the growing divide, Karen remained undeterred. She saw herself as the guardian of Maplewood's standards, someone willing to make tough decisions for the greater good. But deep down, her obsession with control stemmed from something deeper: insecurity. Karen feared change because it threatened the fragile balance she worked so hard to maintain. To her, the Thompsons weren't just breaking rules. They represented everything she wanted to keep out of her perfect world. As weeks turned into months, Tensions simmered beneath the surface. The Thompsons continued living their lives, blissfully, unaware of the storm brewing around them. Meanwhile, Karen grew increasingly frustrated, convinced that her efforts to rein them in were being ignored. Something had to give, and soon it did. Late one evening, fueled by anger and a misplaced sense of righteousness, Karen hatched a plan she believed would finally solve the problem once and for all. What she didn't realize was that her actions would spiral out of control, leading to consequences far beyond anything she could have imagined. For now, though, Maplewood Estates remained outwardly peaceful, its picturesque facade hiding the cracks beginning to form underneath. Karen Miller sat alone in her dimly lit kitchen, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but sleep was the last thing on her mind. Her thoughts were consumed by the Thompsons and their refusal to conform to the standards she had worked so hard to uphold. Every time she looked at their teal door or heard the thud of a basketball hitting the pavement, it felt like a personal insult. To Karen, the neighborhood wasn't just a collection of houses. It was a reflection of her ideals, her vision of perfection. And the Thompsons were ruining it. She scrolled through old emails and documents saved on her computer, searching for something, anything, that could give her leverage over them. Karen had already sent multiple letters, filed complaints with the HOA board, and even tried rallying other neighbors to her cause. But nothing seemed to work. The Thompsons either ignored her warnings or politely pushed back, insisting they were within their rights. It was maddening. How could they not see that they didn't belong here, that their choices disrupted the harmony of the entire community? As she sifted through files, an idea began to form in her mind. It started as a fleeting thought, almost too bold to consider, but the more she dwelled on it, the more it took shape. What if she could issue an eviction notice? Not just any notice, one that would force the Thompsons to leave Maplewood Estates for good. She imagined the satisfaction of watching their moving truck pull away, leaving behind a clean slate for someone who actually cared about fitting in. But there was a problem. Eviction notices weren't something the HOA could legally issue. Only landlords or property management companies had that authority, and the Thompsons owned their home outright. Still, Karen convinced herself that desperate times called for desperate measures. If the rules couldn't be enforced properly, then maybe bending them was justified. After all, she reasoned, she was doing this for the greater good of the neighborhood. Surely people would understand once the Thompsons were gone. With trembling hands, Karen opened a blank document on her laptop. She'd seen official HOA letters before and knew exactly how they should look. Using templates she found online, she recreated the association's letterhead, complete with its logo and contact information. Then, she carefully typed out the body of the notice, making sure every word sounded formal and authoritative. Reading it over, Karen felt a surge of pride. The document looked professional, convincing, and entirely believable. No one would suspect it was forged. She printed 2 copies, one to slip under the Thompsons' door and another to keep for her records. As she folded the paper neatly, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that what she was doing might be wrong. But Karen quickly silenced it. This wasn't about revenge, she told herself. It was about protecting the integrity of the neighborhood. The next morning, Karen woke up earlier than usual, her heart racing with anticipation. She dressed casually, wanting to blend in as much as possible, and grabbed the forged notice from her kitchen counter. Clutching it tightly, she stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional chirping of birds and the distant hum of a lawnmower. Most residents were still asleep, giving Karen the perfect opportunity to act without drawing attention. She walked briskly toward the Thompsons' house, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. When she reached their porch, she hesitated for a moment, glancing around nervously. Seeing no one, she bent down and slid the notice underneath their front door. The sound of paper brushing against wood echoed softly in the silence, sending a shiver down her spine. For a brief second, Karen wondered if she'd made a mistake. But then she straightened up, squared her shoulders, and reminded herself why she was doing this. Walking back to her own house, Karen allowed herself a small smile. The hardest part was over. Now, all she had to do was wait. In her mind, the Thompsons would read the notice, panic, and start packing their belongings. They'd realize they couldn't win against someone as determined as her and decide to cut their losses. Within weeks, their house would go back on the market, and Karen could ensure it was sold to someone who truly appreciated the values of Maplewood Estates. What Karen failed to consider, however, was the resilience of the Thompsons. Unlike many of their neighbors who avoided conflict at all costs, Mark and Lisa weren't afraid to stand up for themselves. When they discovered the eviction notice later that day, confusion quickly turned to suspicion. Something about the document felt off. The tone, the phrasing, even the signature at the bottom. It didn't match the style of previous communications they'd received from the HOA. Determined to get answers, Lisa picked up the phone and dialed the number listed on the notice. To her surprise, the person who answered, the actual president of the HOA, had no idea what she was talking about. "An eviction notice?" he repeated incredulously. "That's impossible. We don't have the authority to evict homeowners. Who gave you this?" Lisa described the document in detail, and the president grew increasingly alarmed. He assured her that the notice was fake and promised to investigate further. Hanging up, Lisa shared the news with Mark, who immediately suspected foul play. "This has Karen written all over it," he muttered, shaking his head. Though they didn't have proof yet, both of them knew Karen's disdain for their family ran deep enough to motivate drastic actions. Meanwhile, Karen went about her day, as if nothing unusual had happened. She watered her plants, baked cookies for the upcoming bake sale, and chatted amiably with neighbors during her daily walk. On the surface, she appeared calm and collected. Inside, though, her nerves were fraying. Every knock on the door or ring of the phone made her jump, fearing that someone had figured out what she'd done. Yet, as hours passed without incident, her confidence began to return. Maybe she'd gotten away with it after all. Little did Karen know her plan was unraveling faster than she could imagine. Unbeknownst to her, several of her neighbors had security cameras installed outside their homes, including one positioned directly across from the Thompsons' porch. The footage captured everything: the early morning delivery of the forged notice, the figure slipping it under the door, and the unmistakable silhouette of Karen Miller walking away. By the end of the day, whispers spread among a few trusted neighbors about the strange events unfolding at 12 Maple Lane. While some dismissed the rumors as gossip, others recognized the gravity of the situation. Someone had crossed a line, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. For Karen, the illusion of control she clung to so desperately was beginning to crumble. And when it did, the consequences would shake Maplewood Estates to its core. The Thompsons were no strangers to challenges, but the forged eviction notice took things to a whole new level. Sitting at their kitchen table, Mark and Lisa stared at the document in disbelief. It was one thing to receive passive-aggressive letters from Karen or even deal with her complaints about their front door color. But this felt like an attack, a deliberate attempt to push them out of their home. They weren't just angry, they were hurt. How could someone go so far as to fabricate something so serious? Lisa broke the silence first. "This isn't just about rules anymore," she said firmly, her voice tinged with frustration. "Karen's trying to run us out of here because we're different. She doesn't want us here, plain and simple." Mark nodded in agreement, his jaw tightening. He had always tried to stay calm and reasonable when dealing with Karen, but this crossed every line. Something had to be done. Not just for their sake, but for the principle of it all. Determined not to let fear dictate their next steps, the couple decided to dig deeper. The conversation with the HOA president had confirmed their suspicions. The notice was fake. But who would forge such a document? And why? While they didn't have concrete evidence yet, both Mark and Lisa strongly suspected Karen. After all, she had been vocal about her disapproval of them since day one. Still, accusations without proof would only make things worse. They needed solid evidence before taking any action. Their search led them to a local lawyer named Sarah Chen, known for her expertise in property disputes. Sarah listened intently as the Thompsons explained the situation, occasionally jotting down notes. When they showed her the forged notice, her eyebrows shot up. "This is serious," she said after examining it closely. "Forgery is a criminal offense, and impersonating an official body like the HOA can carry significant penalties." She reassured them that they were within their rights to fight back and suggested filing a formal complaint with local authorities. Encouraged by Sarah's advice, the Thompsons wasted no time. They gathered copies of all previous communications from Karen, including emails, letters, and text messages, creating a timeline of events that highlighted her escalating behavior. They also reached out to their neighbors, asking if anyone had witnessed anything unusual around the time the notice appeared. At first, responses were mixed. Some residents were hesitant to get involved, fearing backlash from Karen or others aligned with her. But a few brave souls stepped forward, sharing tidbits of information that pointed toward Karen's involvement. One neighbor, Mrs. Dawson, mentioned seeing Karen walking near the Thompsons' house early that morning. Another, Mr. Peterson, admitted he'd overheard Karen complaining bitterly about the family during a recent book club meeting. Then there was the security footage. A game changer. A younger couple living across the street revealed they had cameras installed outside their home, which captured activity on the Thompsons' porch. When they reviewed the recordings, the truth became undeniable. Karen Miller herself had slipped the forged notice under the Thompsons' door. Armed with this evidence, the Thompsons returned to Sarah, who immediately drafted a formal complaint and submitted it to the police department. Within days, investigators began looking into the matter, interviewing witnesses and reviewing the video footage. Word of the investigation spread quickly through Maplewood Estates, dividing the neighborhood once again. Some residents rallied behind the Thompsons, outraged by Karen's actions. Others, however, remained loyal to Karen, dismissing the allegations as exaggerations or misunderstandings. Karen, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her, at least at first. She continued her routine, attending HOA meetings, organizing bake sales, and chatting with neighbors as though nothing was amiss. Deep down, though, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. Conversations with certain neighbors felt strained, and some avoided making eye contact altogether. Still, she convinced herself it was probably nothing. Surely, the Thompsons would quietly comply with the notice and move out, just as she'd planned. Her false sense of security shattered when two detectives knocked on her door one afternoon. Startled, Karen invited them inside, pretending to be cooperative while her mind raced with questions. What did they want? Had the Thompsons complained about her again? She smiled politely, offering them coffee, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured the cups. When the officers finally revealed the reason for their visit, the forged eviction notice, Karen's face went pale. At first, she denied everything, feigning shock and indignation. "That's ridiculous," she exclaimed, clutching her chest dramatically. "Why would I do something like that? I love this neighborhood." The detectives exchanged knowing glances but pressed on, showing her the security footage. There, in black and white, was undeniable proof. Karen sneaking onto the Thompsons' porch late at night, placing the forged document under their door. For a moment she sat frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, realizing denial was futile, she crumbled. I didn't mean for it to go this far," Karen stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just wanted them to leave. They don't belong here. They ruin everything." Her voice cracked as she spoke, revealing the depth of her resentment. The detectives listened patiently, but made it clear that her intentions didn't excuse her actions. Forgery was a crime, and she would have to answer for it. As news of Karen's arrest spread, Maplewood Estates erupted into chaos. Some residents expressed sympathy, believing she had simply gone too far in her quest to protect the neighborhood. Others celebrated openly, calling her downfall long overdue. Social media lit up with posts dissecting the scandal, and local newspapers ran stories about the HOA Karen whose obsession with control had landed her in legal trouble. For the Thompsons, the ordeal was far from easy. Being targeted so maliciously had taken an emotional toll, leaving them wary of their neighbors and questioning whether they truly belonged in Maplewood Estates. Yet, amidst the turmoil, they found unexpected allies. Families who had previously kept their distance now reached out, offering support and friendship. Children invited Jake and Emily to play dates, and invitations to neighborhood gatherings started appearing in their mailbox. The incident also sparked broader discussions about inclusivity and fairness within the community. Many residents began questioning the rigid rules enforced by the HOA, wondering if they served any real purpose beyond stifling individuality. Slowly but surely, attitudes began to shift. People started embracing diversity rather than shunning it, recognizing that true harmony came from acceptance, not conformity. As for Karen, her life changed dramatically. Stripped of her position in the HOA and facing charges of forgery and harassment, she retreated from public life, avoiding eye contact whenever she ventured outside. Her once pristine yard grew over with weeds, and her award-winning roses wilted in neglect. Though some neighbors still defended her, most viewed her as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when personal biases override common decency. Through it all, the Thompsons stood firm, refusing to let fear or intimidation drive them away. Their teal door remained a symbol of resilience, inspiring others to challenge outdated norms and embrace change. And while Maplewater Estates still had its quirks and conflicts, it was slowly becoming a place where everyone, regardless of how perfect they seemed, could find a home. The day of Karen Miller's arrest sent shockwaves through Maplewood Estates. It was a scene straight out of a drama series, with neighbors peeking through their curtains as police cars pulled up to her immaculate home. The officers didn't use sirens or flashing lights. This wasn't a high-speed chase, but the quiet authority of their presence spoke volumes. For Karen, who had always prided herself on being in control, it was humiliating. She stood on her porch, clutching a robe around her shoulders, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled from sleep, as detectives explained why they were there. At first, she tried to play innocent. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted, her voice trembling but defiant. "I would never do something like this. Someone must be framing me." Her protests fell flat when the investigators showed her the security footage. There, she was clear as day, sneaking onto the Thompsons' porch late at night and slipping the forged eviction notice under their door. The camera angle captured every detail: her face, her posture, even the slight hesitation before she walked away. For a moment, Karen seemed frozen, her mind scrambling for an explanation that wouldn't make things worse. But the truth was undeniable, and she knew it. Tears welled up in her eyes as she collapsed into a chair, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I just wanted them to leave," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "They don't belong here. They're ruining everything." The detectives listened without judgment, jotting down notes as they pieced together her motives. While Karen's actions stemmed from frustration and entitlement, they also highlighted deeper issues within the neighborhood. This wasn't just about one woman's obsession with rules. It was about power dynamics, exclusion, and the lengths some people would go to enforce conformity. As the investigation unfolded, more details emerged, painting a picture of a community divided by privilege, and prospective news of Karen's arrest spread like wildfire. Within hours, whispers turned into full-blown conversations, both online and offline. Social media exploded with posts dissecting the scandal. Some labeled her HOA Karen, mocking her behavior, while others defended her, claiming she had good intentions despite her poor choices. Local news outlets picked up the story, dubbing it the case of the fake eviction notice. Reporters camped outside Karen's house, hoping to catch a glimpse of her leaving or returning. Neighbors found themselves fielding calls from journalists, asking for quotes or insights into life in Maplewood Estates. For many residents, the situation forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about their community. Was Karen really the problem, Or was she merely a symptom of a larger issue? Had the HOA's strict rules created an environment where people felt empowered to act unreasonably? These questions lingered in the air, sparking heated debates during coffee mornings, book clubs, and casual chats over fences. Some neighbors rallied behind Karen, believing she had been pushed too far. She was only trying to protect the neighborhood, one elderly resident argued during a tense HOA meeting. Sure, what she did was wrong, but you can't blame her for caring so much. Others dismissed these arguments, pointing out that caring too much had led to criminal behavior. Protecting the neighborhood doesn't mean harassing people until they leave, countered a younger mom, whose kids played basketball with Jake and Emily. Maplewood should be a place where everyone feels welcome, not judged. Amidst the chaos, the Thompsons found themselves at the center of attention, some supportive, some skeptical. Mark and Lisa appreciated the outpouring of solidarity from those who had initially kept their distance. Families invited them to barbecues, children knocked on their door asking to play, and strangers stopped them in the grocery store to express admiration for standing their ground. Yet not everyone was convinced. A small faction of residents continued to side with Karen, viewing the Thompsons as troublemakers who had disrupted the peace of the neighborhood. Despite the mixed reactions, the Thompsons remained steadfast. They refused to let fear dictate their lives or force them out of their home. Instead, they used the opportunity to advocate for change. With the help of Sarah Chen, their lawyer, they organized a town hall meeting to discuss ways to improve inclusivity and fairness within the HOA. The turnout was impressive, with nearly every household represented. People packed into the community center, eager to share their thoughts and concerns. Mark took the stage first, his voice steady but heartfelt. "We moved here because we believed Maplewood Estates could be our forever home," he began. "But what we've experienced since then has shown us that not everyone shares that vision. Rules are important, yes, but they shouldn't come at the cost of kindness and respect." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for understanding. We're asking for a neighborhood where differences are celebrated, not punished." Lisa followed, sharing her own perspective as a mother. "Our kids deserve to grow up in a place where they feel accepted," she said, her tone warm yet firm, "where they can ride their bikes, play basketball, and paint their front door teal without feeling like outsiders. That's the kind of community I want to build, not just for my family, but for everyone." Their speech resonated deeply with many attendees, sparking applause and nods of agreement. Even some of Karen's former supporters admitted they had misjudged the Thompsons, acknowledging that rigid enforcement of rules often came at the expense of human connection. One neighbor stood up and confessed, "I used to think Karen was right about keeping things uniform, but seeing how this has played out made me realize we've lost sight of what truly matters: being good neighbors." Not everyone agreed, of course. A few vocal opponents argued that relaxing standards would lead to chaos, warning that allowing exceptions would open the floodgates to disorder. "If we start bending the rules for one family, where does it end?" asked a man who lived 2 doors down from Karen. "Next thing you know, we'll have neon signs and junkyards in our front yards." The debate raged on, reflecting the broader tension between tradition and progress. But for the first time, voices advocating for change outnumbered those clinging to the status quo. By the end of the meeting, a tentative plan emerged. Revising the HOA guidelines to prioritize inclusivity while maintaining reasonable standards. Committees were formed to draft new policies, ensuring input from all residents rather than just a select few. As the dust settled, Karen's trial loomed ahead. Facing charges of forgery, harassment, and impersonation, she struck a plea deal to avoid further legal complications. In court, she admitted guilt, her voice shaking as she apologized to the Thompsons and the community. "I let my emotions get the better of me," she said, her head bowed. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how wrong I was." The judge sentenced her to probation, ordered her to pay restitution to the Thompsons, and banned her from holding any position within the HOA for life. Publicly humiliated, Karen retreated from neighborhood activities. Her once pristine yard grew wild. mirroring the turmoil inside her. Gone were the days of organizing events or policing her neighbors. Instead, she became a shadow of her former self, avoiding eye contact whenever she ventured outside. Some neighbors pitied her, believing she had learned her lesson. Others saw her downfall as poetic justice, a reminder that wielding power recklessly comes with consequences. For the Thompsons, the ordeal left scars, but also strengthened their resolve. Their teal door became a symbol of resilience, inspiring others to embrace individuality rather than suppress it. Slowly but surely, Maplewood Estates began to transform. New families moved in, bringing fresh perspectives and ideas. Solar panels popped up on rooftops, colorful murals adorned garage doors, and laughter echoed through the streets once again. Though challenges remained, the neighborhood was learning to balance unity with diversity, a delicate dance that required patience, empathy, and compromise. And while Karen's actions had caused pain, they also served as a catalyst for growth, reminding everyone that true harmony comes not from enforcing rules, but from fostering mutual respect. The aftermath of Karen Miller's arrest and the subsequent changes in Maplewood Estates marked a turning point for the neighborhood. What had once been a community defined by rigid rules and conformity began to evolve into something more inclusive, vibrant, and alive. The transformation wasn't immediate or seamless. It came with challenges, disagreements, and moments of tension. But over time, it became clear that the events surrounding the Thompsons had sparked a shift in mindset. People started asking themselves what kind of place they wanted Maplewood Estates to be, a fortress of sameness, or a welcoming home for all. For Karen, life after the scandal was unrecognizable. Once the center of attention at HOA meetings and social gatherings, she now lived quietly, almost invisibly within the neighborhood. Her meticulously maintained yard, once the envy of Maplewood, grew over with weeds, reflecting her withdrawal from public life. She stopped attending book clubs, bake sales, and holiday parties, choosing instead to keep to herself. Neighbors who passed her on the street noticed how she avoided eye contact, her confident stride replaced by hesitant steps. Some felt sympathy for her, believing she had paid dearly for her mistakes. Others saw her isolation as a fitting consequence, a reminder that actions have repercussions. Despite her fall from grace, Karen's story served as a cautionary tale, not just for her but for everyone in Maplewood Estates. It highlighted the dangers of letting personal biases dictate behavior and the harm caused when people prioritize control over compassion. Conversations about inclusivity and fairness became more frequent, both formally during HOA meetings and informally over backyard fences. Residents realized that while rules are important, they should never come at the expense of kindness, empathy, or acceptance. The Thompsons played a pivotal role in this cultural shift. Far from being driven out, they emerged as leaders in reshaping the neighborhood's identity. Their teal door, once criticized as too bold or out of place, became a symbol of resilience and individuality. Other homeowners began taking inspiration from their courage, making subtle yet meaningful changes to their own properties. A family down the street painted their front door a cheerful yellow, while another installed wind chimes that chimed softly in the breeze. Slowly, the neighborhood shed its monotonous uniformity, embracing color, creativity, and personality. Mark and Lisa also took active roles in revising the HOA guidelines, working alongside a committee of neighbors to strike a balance between structure and flexibility. They advocated for policies that encourage self-expression while maintaining basic standards of safety and cleanliness. For example, the infamous approved paint colors list was expanded to include a wider range of shades, allowing residents more freedom to personalize their homes. Similarly, restrictions on outdoor activities were relaxed, permitting children to play basketball in driveways and families to host small gatherings without excessive red tape. These changes didn't happen overnight. There were heated debates, compromises, and moments of frustration. Some residents clung stubbornly to old ways, arguing that loosening rules would lead to chaos. If we let people do whatever they want, next thing you know, we'll have junk, cars parked on lawns, One neighbor grumbled during a particularly contentious meeting, but others countered these fears with logic and patience, pointing out that reasonable adjustments wouldn't compromise the neighborhood's charm, they would enhance it. One of the most significant milestones came when the HOA officially adopted a new mission statement: to create a safe, welcoming, and diverse community where every resident feels valued and respected. It was a simple sentence, but it carried profound meaning. For years, the association had focused solely on aesthetics and order. Now, it acknowledged the importance of fostering genuine connections among neighbors. This shift resonated deeply, with many residents, especially younger families, who appreciated the emphasis on inclusivity. As the months passed, the effects of these changes rippled through Maplewood Estates. New families moved in, drawn not only by the beautiful homes but also by the sense of warmth and acceptance. One couple, transplants from a bustling city, chose Maplewood because they'd heard stories about its progressive attitude. "We weren't sure if we'd fit in here," the wife admitted during a welcome dinner hosted by the Thompsons. "But seeing how open everyone is to different lifestyles made us feel like we could belong." Children, too, benefited from the evolving atmosphere. Jake and Emily, once seen as disruptive due to their playful energy, became beloved fixtures in the neighborhood. Kids flocked to their driveway for impromptu basketball games, and parents organized weekend scavenger hunts that brought everyone together. Even Mr. Peterson, whose pink flamingos had once been a source of contention, joined in the fun, offering his lawn as a starting point for treasure hunts. Laughter echoed through the streets again, replacing the tense silence that had lingered during Karen's reign. Of course, not everything was perfect. Old habits die hard, and some residents still struggled to adapt to the new norms. Complaints occasionally surfaced about noise levels, landscaping choices, or even holiday decorations, but they were handled differently now. Rather than issuing stern letters or threats, neighbors approached each other directly, seeking solutions through dialogue rather than confrontation. This collaborative spirit helped mend fences and build stronger relationships. Karen watched these developments from afar, unable to fully participate. Though she remained largely isolated, there were glimpses of change in her demeanor. During rare encounters with neighbors, she offered quiet apologies, acknowledging the pain she had caused. While forgiveness didn't come easily to everyone, some extended olive branches, inviting her to join community events or simply checking in to see how she was doing. These small acts of grace reminded Karen and everyone else that healing is possible even after deep wounds. Looking back, the Thompsons reflected on how far they'd come since moving into 12 Maple Lane. What had started as a nightmare, the forged eviction notice, the harassment, the legal battle, had ultimately led to something beautiful. Their fight hadn't just secured their place in the neighborhood, it had inspired a movement toward greater understanding and unity. Mark often joked that their teal door deserved its own plaque, commemorating its role in sparking change. Lisa smiled at the thought, knowing that their journey was about so much more than paint. In the end, the story of Maplewood Estates wasn't just about Karen or the Thompsons. It was about the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the potential for growth even in the face of adversity. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, and likely never would be. But it was becoming something better, a place where differences were celebrated, where rules served humanity instead of stifling it, and where true harmony came not from rigid enforcement, but from mutual respect. And so, life in Maplewood Estates continued, shaped by lessons learned and hearts opened. The streets remained lined with manicured lawns and colorful flower beds, but now they buzzed with laughter, conversation, and the unmistakable hum of a community coming together. The Thompsons' teal door stood proudly amidst it all, a testament to the idea that sometimes breaking the mold is exactly what a neighborhood needs to thrive.